By the end of October, the darkness has returned. Long before the commercialisation of Halloween, the old festival of All Hallows, or Samhain, celebrated the end of the old year and the thin veil between the worlds of the earth and the supernatural. This is a time of death, decay, and breakdown. The plant world has prepared for the new beginnings of next year, and only those evergreen plants like holly, ivy and yew remain green. Good evening. Now, as promised, I'm going to read you another short story from this book, Botanical Folk Tales of Britain and Ireland. I might read you two, if you're very good. This first one is called The Elder Tree Witch. I've not read it myself before. Elder is gloriously and unapologetically witchy. Its blossoms are fragrant and scent the midsummer, but the berries and the wood are not to be messed with. Many people used to believe the elder trees and witches were one and the same thing, and for this reason kept elder out of their hedgerows. Here's the story of a Somerset farmer who was a little bit careless in that regard. Despite treating myself to a little electric lighting this evening, it's still mightily difficult to see the words, so I've had to light my paraffin Aladdin lamp here to see better. There was a farm close to Knighton, and it's not good land round there, but the farmer did his best with it. He had a few cows, and they gave fine milk. There weren't any woods on the farm, but there were good stout hedges, and the farmer was glad they had no elder in them. Everyone knew that if you tried to chop an elder tree down, it would turn into a witch who would chase you until you crossed running water, and he didn't like the sound of that. There came a time when someone, or something, was stealing milk from the farmer's cows. He couldn't afford the loss, so he got up during the night to go and check on the cows and to spy on anyone who was stealing. He went up to the top field, and there was a shadow of a small tree up by the hedge, a tree that he didn't remember being there, a gangly, dark tree, an elder tree. The farmer was all in a cold sweat, and he drove the cows into the little home pasture, but the chain was gone from the gate, and he couldn't fasten it, so he used a big stone against it to keep it shut. Later on, he told his wife and daughter what he'd seen. "You girt fool," said his wife. "Did you draw a cross in the mud, this side of the gate?" No, he hadn't. The daughter was at the window, and she went pale as a ghost. "It's out there, in the pasture, Out there right now, among the cows! It's an elder tree!" She started shrieking and running round the house, closing all the shutters. The old granny in the corner by the fire sat and listened, and said nothing. She laid a big iron shovel among the red-hot embers, and raked in a faggot of ashwood to burn well. The farmer was a brave man, and his cows were important to him. He puffed out his chest. "Wife, go and fetch the silver button that came off my Sunday coat." She had sewed it back on, but she snipped off the button and brought it to him, and by the time he had loaded his gun with the button, his daughter had swung the crossbar down against the back door, and the granny had got the iron shovel nice and hot. Then the wife opened the front door of the farmhouse a crack, and the farmer looked out. There was the tree in among his cows, so he couldn't take a long shot for fear of hitting one of them. "I'll have to go out there," he said. "Hold the door open and let me out and in again if I have to run for it." Out he went, trembling all over to save his cows. He had to get too close for comfort to take aim, and he couldn't keep the gun steady. The silver button missed by a long way. The tree yelled out, and so did the farmer, and she leapt after him, and he leapt too, and she came rushing after him, and he ran towards the door as quick as he could. He didn't do badly for a man of his circumference, and his wife slammed the door shut so quickly she caught his coat-tails in it, but she managed to drop the iron bar down, and there they all were inside the house. They could hear the tree's branches scraping and rattling outside, and the tree shrieking like a high gale, but she couldn't get in. Trouble the doors and the windows as she might, the wife and daughter were shrieking as well, and the farmer bellowed like a bull-calf, trying to get his coat-tails free and be out to his cows again. He had the courage, but not the right knowledge. The old granny was quiet. She got up from hearth with a girt shovel of burning coals, and she said to the daughter, "Open the back door wide!" And the girl did. When the elder tree came at the back door, shrieking and leaping, the granny threw the red-hot coals all over her, and then calmly shut the door. And they all saw the blue flames, bleeding twigs, and crackling tree through the window, and there was no more shrieking after that. After a while, Granny took the ash cattle prod and went outside. The heap of ashes was cold already, and she made a criss-cross in the ashes with the ash stick. The farmer could now free his coat-tails and go out to see the cows. Then the neighbours all came, and there was celebration, for they said that was the end of Madam Widcombe the witch. But it wasn't to be. They found out she was still around, and so was the old black witch over at Sturt. Then someone told them that old Raggy Liddy at Doddington had been burned to death. So that's who it was. I don't know if I like that. There are several elder trees here in the hedge. There's an American elder, not 6 feet from the edge of the yurt this side. She did produce very good berries this year, but I was a little too afraid to pick them. I've heard that the word elder is some sort of Middle English word for fire, so it's like a fire tree, not just because of the fiery, medicinal, astringent quality of the berries, but because the hollow stems of the elder They do make very good kindling when dry, but they can also be used like bellows or to puff on the fire because of their straw-like nature. So maybe that's why it's called elder or fire tree. But I do have great respect for them, and I never touch the elder without asking permission first, lest it come after me in the night. I still have only pruned one to this day, and I left it for a few days first until it had made its decision. But that's another story. Speaking of another story, you've been sitting very, very quietly and comfortably, so I'll read you a second. Like with the first one, this is new to me too. This one is called The Wonderful Wood. A number of stories tell of trees protecting the vulnerable, and even dealing out justice to the wicked. This story comes from Warwickshire. Once upon a time, and it wasn't your time, and it wasn't my time, but it was a very good time, there was a cruel king who liked to ride out hunting, not the stag, not the boar, but the young maiden. After he caught a maiden, and had his wicked way with her, he would kill her by using his sharp sword to cut off her head. Shall I read any more? It's not gripping me so far. Alright, if you insist. Because he was the king, nobody could do anything to stop this wicked man finding his twisted pleasure, and he terrorized the countryside for miles around. All the fathers and mothers sent their daughters away to safety, if they could, but there was one little maid in a lonely cottage who couldn't go. She lived with her grandmother, who was too poor to send her away, so she kept the maiden well hidden, and earned their bread, and kept by spinning. Now, there was a great wild wood near the cottage, and nobody dared to go into it, not even the wicked king, because of the great and powerful oak tree that grew there and ruled the place. It was a place for trees, not humans. One market day, the grandmother was very ill, so the little maid had to take along the hanks of wool to market, or they'd starve. Well, the little maid cried, and her grandmother cried too, and blessed her, and told her to be as quiet as possible, and not to go through the great wild wood, although it was the quickest way. The little maid took heed of all the advice, and off she went on her tiptoes to market, carrying the bundle of wool. All right, Kettle, you'll have your time. She hadn't got far when she caught sight of the cruel king riding along in the distance. She didn't run, but quietly, very quietly, she tiptoed straight into the great wild wood. Immediately she felt safer. It was a wonderful wood. She walked for some time in the direction of the market, and there, in a clearing in the middle of the wonderful wood, was a huge oak tree. This must be the great oak. The little maid wasn't scared. She curtsied politely to the tree and asked if she could travel through safely, and the tree let her go past, and through the wood into the town to market. But the cruel king had seen her flit through the trees, and that wasn't all right. He spurred his horse and he rode after her into the great wild wood. When the king got to the huge oak tree, he cursed at it and tried to push his horse through past the tree. It just happened that a large bough fell from the oak tree at that very moment. It fell heavy, and it broke the king's neck. There he fell on the ground, stone dead, and his horse rode away terrified. So that was all right. But the king's men came looking for him. They could see him through the trees. They galloped into the wood to cut the great oak tree down in revenge. The tree gave a great creaking groan, a call to his own kind thereabouts. As the men readied themselves with axes under its boughs, the other trees drew in closer and closer and loomed in on them, until there was nothing left but a tree 3 times the size of the old oak tree, with branches in all directions, no trace of the men left behind. It was a wonderful wood. It was a place for trees, not humans. I hope you enjoyed those. Once again, thank you very much for watching. Stay cozy and see you soon. Bye.